Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Caregiver Crisis Care Right podcast. I'm Annalee Kruger, owner of Care Right Incorporated. We work with families across the country developing customized aging plans, which gives the family caregiver their life back because now they don't have to worry about what's going on with mom and dad, what care options are available to them. You can just be the son and the daughter again. You don't have to be the care patrol, the care coordinator, and all that patient advocacy. We help take care of all of that on behalf of our clients. So we have attorney Ed Wollman back on our show today. This is our fourth. This is a series of 4, and I'm excited to talk with you today, Attorney Wollman, about just difficult conversations. Let me back up. Attorney Wollman is here in the Naples, Florida area. So some of the things that we're going to talk about might be him specific, like your firm specifically as well, but also just kind of in a overview of kind of what Florida law as well. So the question I always get asked is, when is a good time to start having these conversations about, the what ifs of aging? My rule of thumb is always like right now, like a year ago, we should have started having these conversations. What about from your perspective? When is it time, and how do we have these conversations with our decision makers that we've named in our estate documents? How do we pull all of this stuff together?
Great. Thanks, Annalee. Hi, everyone. So basically, as an estate planning attorney, I get the question all the time, when's the right time to share the estate planning documents? Forget your finances, your long-term care plan, which is what we're here to talk about today, but just when is the right time to share your documents with your family members or your closest people to you that are named in the documents. And we've always taken the position that there's 2 ways to go. The one that's most common is it's really not anybody's business yet. You don't want to open up that can of worms. So wait until after you're 75 years old, wait until you need to share with them, but give them my card or our firm's card so they know where to reach us because you've given us the permission to speak with them. Secondly, the other side of the coin is, well, maybe it's better to share with them the documents now so they can anticipate what's going to happen, like which family member is named to be in control of healthcare decisions, which family member is in charge of financial decisions. And the answer is, if you don't share with them your finances and you don't share with them how the documents work, it's kind of empty that they see these complex legal terms called legalese, but they don't really understand how the money flows. So on that note, Annalee, the way we work in tandem with you is when we're ready to have the conversation, it should be a group conversation where we actually do a flow chart. We make it into a PowerPoint, we bring the family in and we go through it with the family as exactly how things are going to go. Most clients don't want to do that until they're much more mature because they don't really feel like disclosing all that confidential information. I would turn the mic back over to you on the healthcare issue. As we talked about in the last 3 presentations, you usually are not brought in, as you said, unfortunately, until there's crisis. And we've concluded that you need to plan early and plan often because these are really difficult subjects even to talk to yourself about. Like, am I going to stay here? Am I going to go live with one of my children? Am I going to go to assisted living here or a continuum of care, a continual care retirement community here? Or am I going to find one up north near one or more of my family members? So Annalee, we're going to talk today about finances, when it's the right time to share the financial information with the family members. And I know you normally are not brought in until crisis, but you have a whole program called the planning process. Part of the financial planning process is this elder care process. Can you tell us about your kind of copyrighted, patented process that you use?
Sure. The aging plan, my rule of thumb is families need to start having these conversations about aging sooner rather than later. So that's number one. Number two is I believe that if you have named your son or your daughter or someone, if you've named someone as a power of attorney, whether healthcare or finances, you need to actually have conversation with them about so for healthcare, what are my wishes as I age or if I get sick, what specifically are my wishes? If you've named someone your power of attorney, your financial power of attorney, they need to know what you have in place, like long-term care insurance and those kind of things. What money you have, who's your financial planner, who's your attorney. Like, we need to start talking about these things sooner rather than later, because when you talk about crises, that's usually when families come to me, although I wish families would be brought to me sooner and families would find me sooner when they are in that sweet spot of planning ahead, because when they come to me, it's in crisis mode and family relationships are strained all across the board. This is often when there's been a hospitalization or a new major diagnosis like a stroke or dementia or cancer or some rare disease. So now the family is emotionally reeling from this hospitalization or this new diagnosis. And then here I come along, bebopping into their life and going, okay, so who's power of attorney? And they're like, I don't know. Or maybe they just found out that they're the power of attorney. And now they're having to make big decisions. They don't have any tools. They don't have the tools they need to do their job as a power of attorney, right? So how can you expect someone to be your power of attorney if they don't know what accounts you have, what passwords, what bills come out of which account, who the financial planner is? So that's one of the things, one of the aspects of the aging plan is we need to start talking about this stuff sooner rather than later. You don't want to be trying to, as adult kids or whoever the power of attorney is, the worst time to try to figure out what those next steps are is in the stage of a crisis.
Mhm. Yeah, even something as simple as planning for a funeral, if you do pre-need and you've paid for it ahead of time and you've written down either revocably or irrevocably with the funeral parlor what you want, it's going to take a lot of stress off, because funerals are extremely expensive and you don't want to be in a sales mode. You don't want to be talking to a salesman when you're in the grief stage. So even pre-need is really important as well to talk about with yourself, your spouse, your children, or your closest relatives. So let's talk about the cost of care. There's a myth that if I go to a facility, it's very expensive. But the reality in my 35 years of experience is that if you stay home, it can be very expensive. Once you need around-the-clock care, that is 3 shifts of 8 hours at around $25 to $30 an hour or more. It comes out to over $20,000 a month in addition to your regular household expenses. If you go to a facility, you have assisted living at 6 or 7 or 8,000, sometimes a lot less. Sometimes it starts at 3,800 to 4,200, and then depending on the care level, and then a nursing home is double that. So, how do you approach that? Am I going to stay at home? Can you afford to stay at home? Conversation.
Yeah, so that's so in our aging plan packages and our crisis management packages, it is me facilitating their family meetings so that they can make informed decisions, because oftentimes families assume that someone else is going to pay for this care, right? They think, oh, Medicare is going to pay for everything. Well, no, it's not. Or somehow it's just magically going to get paid for. No, how you pay for care is private funds, your savings, your checking account, long-term care insurance or a life insurance hybrid, VA benefits, reverse mortgage for those that may be a fit for. But that's how care is paid. So when families come to me, they often they're so misinformed that's why I have to spend so much time educating them so they can make informed decisions. Because if they think, it just makes sense. If you're making decisions off of poor information, you're going to make poor decisions. So if you're going into this aging journey and you're thinking, well, I'm going to age in place at home and Medicare pays for everything. Well, you have a rude awakening. And that's what these families do. They have a rude awakening when they're meeting with me and finding out, well, you could be paying upwards of 18, 20 grand a month I have clients paying $25,000 a month to stay at home.
I think we're giving a lot of really useful information. It's almost like, I wish I could have more information, or how do I get more information? I want to cover two things. One is how to contact you and myself, which will give out that information at the end of this short presentation. But also I want to talk about a trick to the trade. If you have to go to a nursing home, Medicare will pay for part of the first 100 days, and it goes like this. Number one, and this is a layman attorney's understanding, you have to have 3 days admitted in the hospital. What they're going to do to trick the system, which is bad, is on the first day, they're not going to admit you. They're going to keep you there for observation sometimes. If they do, that doesn't count as the 3 days of admission. We talked about this in a prior presentation. So the trick to the trade is you must have 3 days of admission before you can obtain the long-term care piece of the benefit at the nursing home. So what they'll do is they'll send you to a rehabilitative center, which is usually inside of a nursing home, and they do wonderful work, and they're happy to have you because they get paid a lot of money. But they only get paid a lot of money if you're there for rehab. And Medicare will pay 100% of the first 20 days and then 80% of the next 80 days until you plateau. Once you plateau, you get kicked out. You don't get kicked out of the facility, but you got to pay privately. Is that about what your knowledge is?
Yeah. So up to 100 days, because a lot of families, when I meet with them, and this has been because I've been in this business for 30 years, families think, oh, Medicare will pay 100 days. No, the only way Medicare pays 100 days is if you still have a qualifying skillable need or skilled need. So that's like feeding tubes, stage 4 skin ulcers. I mean, like, you have to be a medical wreck for Medicare to continue to pay that full up to 100 days, because every week you have to, the therapist and they communicate with Medicare or with your insurance and say, okay, this is the progress that John made this week, and then it's insurance, so they'll decide each week, okay, yep, you still meet criteria. So that's one thing. And when we talk about a qualifying hospital stay, you're absolutely right. You have to make sure, if it's you that you're advocating for you, or if it's your family member you're advocating for, you absolutely need to find out if you are admitted or if you're in observation status, because Medicare looks at the midnight rule. So your head has to be in bed, of the hospital bed, 3 consecutive midnights on admission status, because if you're not, then they say, well, you need to go to rehab. You pay for rehab out of pocket. That can be $500 a day.
So why this is all interesting, because it's kind of an aside, is just to know that rule and remember that rule. Because a lot of times what people want to do out of guilt and necessity and an appropriate ethical moral judgment, they want to bring their spouse or their significant other or their parent home. And what we're saying is, if there is going to be a necessity to go into a facility on a long-term basis, one of the ways to get into these facilities that are usually full is to go in under the rehab, under the Medicare benefit, under rehab. You get in there and then you stay, you do not come home. So if the person is capable of coming home, whether it's yourself or your family member, that's fine. But if they're already cognitively very impaired and very sick, and you're going to have a tough time taking care of them at home, the hardest thing to do is leave them there with obviously the appropriate level of care. And even you can pay for extra care if you want to have extra people there sitting with them. So, but you really want to talk to your advisors, your attorney, your financial advisor, your care coordinator about, hey, what am I supposed to do now? I'm freaking out, I'm emotional, and I don't want to leave my spouse in this facility, but you might be best off to get the best care to not bring them home, because it's going to be covered for a while. Then if you have insurance, long-term care insurance, you're going to have to make sure that the long-term care insurance kicks in, because there's qualifying conditions. Usually you have to not be able to do 2 of 6 daily activities of daily living: toileting, feeding, taking your medicine, showering,
dressing,
dressing, walking, etc. So you really need good advice at that time, and that's financial because that's going to affect you financially. And then in terms of Medicaid, a lot of people think that, well, we'll get Medicaid. Medicaid will pay for it. Medicaid is for when you run out of money. Medicare is when you're a senior. So Medicaid is for theoretically people who have lesser means, and Medicare is for all seniors. So the Medicaid benefit is available for some of you, and there are ways to obtain it, but there's several rules that you have to know, which we're not going to cover today in detail. Just realize you cannot be giving money away for 5 years prior to obtaining the Medicaid benefit. So if you think you're going to be able to kind of shelter your money by giving it away, you must do it with an elder law consultant. We do give advice in that area, and we can show you how to do that if you're running out of money. Say you're a healthy spouse and your sick patient spouse is going to need a lot of care. You're going to want to work with your financial planner and your attorney and your accountant and figure out, how do we protect these assets so that the healthy spouse is not left in the community not being able to support himself or herself. But that's another story for another day. Most of you will be able to privately pay, and you'll probably choose to stay at home. And that's when we get in that round the clock care at $20,000 a month. So we need to make sure you either have insurance or you have enough money to set aside to cover that care. They say the average stay in a facility is 3 years. Bruce Rosenblatt, one of the people in the industry, or I think it might have been another long-term care person in this community, said the average stay is 3 years, but none of my clients are average.
Well, I know, and the, when you look at long-term care insurance statistics, they'll say the average stay is 3 years, but I've been in this industry for 30 years. My clients have lived in these facilities way longer than 3 years. So I'm not entirely sure where they get these numbers from, but
may I rave about you, Annalee? So on the
sure.
cases that my law firm has brought Annalee Kruger in to do care management, unfortunately it has been in crisis, but the people do live longer because once they get good care,
yes,
they snap back, and they're at their optimal benefit. They feel better, and they usually live longer. So you don't want to necessarily, you definitely want that.
Well, yeah, because when they have enough supports in place, because a lot of times these seniors are self-neglected, unintentional self-neglect. They're not eating properly. They're not taking their medications. They have dementia. They're too weak.
And hygiene issues.
The hygiene issues. So once we actually get the right services in there and the right level of supports and care oversight, they thrive, whether it's at home or if the family and the decision is made to move them into a care community, they generally thrive because now they actually they're in the right environment with the right supports for them, right? So
in a lot of these situations, one second, I want to point out just a couple of the samples I told you in the other presentations. People don't want to give up the car. They don't want to give up their alcohol. They don't want to give up their freedom to come and go as they please. So when you have dementia and you don't realize your dementia is at that level, it's very difficult to make those decisions in crisis. Even if you make those decisions ahead of time with your family, like we're suggesting, it's still very difficult to give up the car, the alcohol, and the freedom to travel without some supervision. But it's a complex conversation. I want to mention one other thing before the time gets away from us, and that's Florida homestead. Many states have homestead. Florida has one of the best homestead laws that protects your house. And that is, don't sell your house to pay for your care before speaking with an attorney, because homestead is protected in the probate process, and it could pass to your heirs free of claims from creditors. So I'm not suggesting you shouldn't sell your house, but don't sell your house without getting proper advice before doing so, because there's a wonderful homestead benefit for so many reasons, especially in the Medicaid arena.
And I think that, one takeaway is, I don't know about you, I'm very sure that you're in the same boat, is if we could have talk to these families more in advance versus in crisis mode, they would have much better outcomes. Their family relationships would be much better. They wouldn't be burned out caregivers, and they would have saved them. While it costs money to work with you and to work with me, we save them thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars, because when families don't know what they don't know, they make very expensive mistakes, right? Like if they didn't know about homestead and they sold their house to pay for care, that could have cost that decision, because they were ill-informed or they just didn't know what they didn't know, could have cost them a lot of money. Just like families, when they don't know what they don't know, they make really expensive mistakes, and then they bring me on to undo what they did, provided I am able to do that. And if the damage isn't done already, then I can help them.
So I think there's a couple things here that you shared with me and taught me, or at least I gleaned from talking to you and listening to you on these podcasts or presentations. And that is, our clients don't want to burden their family members.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want to share this financial confidential information. They're not ready to make long-term care decisions, and they feel embarrassed or guilty or upset about the whole process. So they kick the can and just procrastinate. So I know I can't, as a lawyer, move the ball very much, because clients pay lawyers by the hour pretty much, or by the project, and they tend not to call up to discuss psychological issues other than when they're in our office. You, on the other hand, that's basically a big part of your accomplishment, is to help them understand that you need to have these difficult conversations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you need help having these conversations. One of the reasons why families don't have these conversations about the what ifs of aging is because it's uncomfortable, it's awkward, there's family dynamics that get into play, but also you're in uncharted territory. So how are you supposed to facilitate your own family meeting when you don't know what you should be talking about? And so unfortunately, by the time families come to me, their relationships are strained. And any advisor, person, professional, we always want to capture these families sooner rather than later, while they're still in that sweet spot of being a proactive planner. We should never be surprised when the primary caregiver either takes ill, has a stroke, has a heart attack, or dies, because they're simply overwhelmed and they're simply burned out. We could have prevented that if they would have had an aging plan, right?
Mm-hmm.
And preventing people from having terrible care outcomes because they don't know how to boldly advocate for themselves with these healthcare workers and hospitals and nursing homes and home care workers. So really, the more that we can capture and work with these families proactively, the better outcomes that they will have all across the board. When you come to a professional in crisis, we'll help you with whatever options you have, but they're certainly not going to be the same options as if you would have come proactively.
Thank you very much, Annalee. How do people get in touch with you? And we talked at the last presentation about your book and your grab and go binder, which is behind you.
Yeah.
Anything you want to share with us in terms of your process? Do they come in for an initial consultation, especially when they're not in crisis? How do they sign up for the initial consultation? And how do you work with the financial advisor and the attorney in that process?
Yeah, it's definitely a collaborative approach. So it seems like it's kind of a new concept for some professionals of working together as a collaborative approach, but all families come to me with a 30-minute consult, right? So no matter if you're crisis or you're not, because the reality is families are in crisis, but they don't know they're in crisis. So we offer a 30-minute complimentary consult. You can book that directly on the website, which is carerightinc.com. So you can book a 30-minute consult directly on the website. I've got 3 to 5 people on the engagement team, so you'll be able to get in like right away for your consult on Zoom. So based on the 30-minute consult, then we talk about which package makes the most sense for you and your family. And then we go ahead and get started once the paperwork gets taken care of, and then we get you onboarded. So that's the process. How about you? What's the best way for families if they want to learn more about your services? How is the best way for them to reach you?
So as an attorney, a lot of the people that are on listening to this are already clients, but as an attorney, we usually have an initial consultation just to see if there's a good personality fit. We find out what's going on in your life, what you already have in place, what's working, what's not working, and we make long-term suggestions. And I'll touch on all this stuff we talked about today just in passing. But then once we find out that we're a good fit, we'll send an engagement letter for that particular matter. You get to decide whether you want to go forward or not, and you can go forward. Contacting us, I would suggest you just call the office, 239-435-1533, 239-435-1533. But also we have tremendous amount of articles and information on our website, probate-florida.com, and you can check out one of our 6 attorneys. We pretty much have an attorney for all things. I just turned 61 a week ago. I know this is
Happy birthday.
it might be a year or 2 ago when you finally watch this video. Thank you. But my point of raising that is as follows. I'm going to be doing this for another 14 years till I'm 75. I made that decision when I was 35 because most attorneys just sit here and do it until they're far beyond their age of retirement because it's an enjoyable practice. But it's really important. I have a staff that are much younger than me, and my partners are much younger than me. The youngest partner is 37, and each one after that's about 5 years older. So out of the 6 of us, 37, 42, 47, early 50s, late 50s, and myself. So we've really worked hard to get there, and we're very happy to help. We love what we do, and it's kind of a fun. It's not work, as they say. It's enjoyable.
Well, and your clients are very, very, very happy with the work that you and your team do. So they rave about you because we have mutual clients and so forth, and they rave about the services that your team provides them. And that's why you're in the same situation I am. We don't have to necessarily advertise because we get word of mouth referrals, and that's the best way to grow a business.
And one thing I've learned over the years is when we do make a mistake, the first thing you do is, take responsibility and fix it. So, I mean, we're not perfect, but we do strive to be excellent.
Yep.
Thank you very much, Annalee. You have
well done.
Good day.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Take care. Bye-bye.
You too.